The central, almost mythical question that haunts the biography of Orenthal James Simpson is one of improbable transformation. How does a child born into the crushing poverty of the San Francisco projects, battling a severe case of rickets that required crude homemade braces just to stand, metamorphose into the most celebrated athlete in American history? It is a narrative arc that defies the natural order, a plot line that seems ripped from a novel rather than the gritty reality of post-war America. This was not merely a story of athletic improvement, it was a fundamental transcendence of destiny. Born into the hard-scrabble reality of Potrero Hill, where opportunities were suffocated by systemic neglect, Simpson was a child whose body was literally bent by malnutrition. He was a boy who, by all metrics, should have been forgotten. Yet, within that frail frame lay a dormant, explosive power. He did not just escape his circumstances, he obliterated them, rewriting a future of obscurity into a legend of athletic supremacy. The boy who once wobbled on malformed legs would somehow forge himself into a figure of such kinetic perfection that he became the living embodiment of the American dream in its most dazzling, and eventually its most tragically corrupted form that serves as a dark mirror to the nation's own complexities and contradictions. If you find this comprehensive exploration of complex historical figures and the seismic events that defined a generation compelling, please take a moment to support our channel. Clicking the like button helps our documentaries reach a wider audience, signaling to the algorithm that this content matters, while hitting subscribe ensures you never miss our future deep dives. Don't forget to share this video with friends or discussion groups who appreciate detailed, objective storytelling. Your engagement is the vital fuel that allows us to continue bringing these important narratives to light with the depth they deserve. Born in 1947 in the stark landscape of San Francisco's Potrero Hill projects, O.J. Simpson's early existence was defined by a profound lack of resources. This was not a world that promised greatness. It was a life circumscribed by limitations, marked by systemic poverty and racial segregation. His father abandoned the family early on, leaving his mother to raise four children alone in a neighborhood rife with despair, where survival was often a daily struggle and the constant threat of violence hovered over every street corner. As a young boy, O.J.'s physical condition was a source of shame. Rickets left him bow-legged, forcing his mother to construct primitive braces to straighten his limbs. But as he grew, the braces came off, and a miracle was revealed. Within this once frail body was a seed of raw talent. His natural athleticism and explosive combination of speed, grace, and power became his singular focus. He briefly flirted with street life, but a meeting with Willie Mays steered him back towards sports. Sports ceased to be just a game. They became his only visible escape route, a lifeline he grabbed with both hands and sheer will to pull himself onto the shores of a better life. By the time he transferred to the University of Southern California, USC, Simpson had ceased to be just another player. He had become a cultural phenomenon. Wearing the cardinal and gold, he was viewed not merely as an athlete, but as a demigod on the gridiron. His tenure at USC was legendary, punctuated by moments etched in the collective memory of the sport. His 1967 run against UCLA, a weaving 64-yard game-winning touchdown in the game of the century, is still considered one of the greatest plays in college football history. The following year, 1968, served as his coronation. He rushed for an astonishing 1,709 yards, a figure unheard of at the time. His subsequent victory for the Heisman Trophy was a mandate. The vote was arguably the most dominant in the award's history, cementing his status not just as a sports star, but as a true national hero who had conquered the collegiate world. Even more impressive was the way he navigated the turbulent social landscape of the 1960s. In an era defined by civil rights struggles and riots, Simpson meticulously crafted a persona that was non-threatening and endlessly charismatic. With his million-dollar smile and easy charm, he was universally liked, crossing boundaries few black men could at the time. He made a deliberate choice to be post-racial. While athletes like Muhammad Ali took radical political stands, O.J. took a different path. He avoided controversy, making himself palatable to white America by presenting an image of success devoid of Confrontation. He became the safe hero white corporate America felt comfortable inviting into their living rooms. Every single Sunday afternoon, he achieved a unique status where he wasn't seen through the lens of color. He was simply OJ, an icon who belonged to everyone. Drafted by the Buffalo Bills, his professional career reached a legendary zenith in 1973. In a season of only 14 games, he did the impossible. He became the first NFL player to rush for over 2,000 yards. The juice was loose, and the league seemed powerless to catch him. Running through the snow of Buffalo, he turned the team's struggles into a one-man show. But his impact wasn't limited to the stat sheet. He was transforming from a football star into a true American icon. He was more than a running back. He was a symbol of excellence, a household name representing the pinnacle of athletic achievement. His legendary career with the Buffalo Bills highlighted his individual brilliance against the backdrop of a struggling team. He was a diamond in the rough, a beacon of talent on a roster that couldn't match his capabilities, running behind the electric company offensive line. His time in Buffalo was marked by record-breaking runs that endeared him to the working-class fan base. He made the Bills relevant simply by being on the field. Even for Americans who didn't watch football, O.J. Simpson became a household name. He was unstoppable on the field. He evaded tacklers with supernatural grace. Off the field, his charisma made him a media darling, a constant presence on television screens, bridging the gap between sports and entertainment. Perhaps more significantly, Simpson revolutionized the potential for athletes in business by becoming a pioneering corporate pitchman. He was one of the first black athletes to secure massive, mainstream endorsement deals. The Hertz rental car commercials were a stroke of marketing genius. They featured O.J. dressed in a sharp business suit rather than a uniform, leaping over airport seats and running through the terminal. The message was powerful. O.J. wasn't just a jock. He was a trusted, handsome, successful businessman. He was someone you could trust with your keys, your safety, and your brand. This campaign defined his mainstream appeal, making him one of the most recognizable faces in the country. This charm translated perfectly to Hollywood. After his football career wound down, he pivoted to acting, and his most iconic role cemented his lovable persona. As Detective Nordberg in the Naked Gun series, he played against type. Instead of the invincible hero, he portrayed a bumbling, incompetent sidekick who was the butt of the joke. He played it with a self-deprecating charm that endeared him to millions more who had never seen a down of football. He wasn't just an athlete or a pitchman anymore. He was a legitimate movie star, a familiar face who made people laugh. It seemed there was no heart he couldn't win over. By the late 1980s, Simpson had achieved the ultimate American fantasy. He lived the quintessential California dream in a sprawling mansion on Rockingham Avenue in Brentwood. He had fame, wealth, an adoring public, and a beautiful family. He held court at country clubs and hosted lavish parties. To the outside observer, his life was perfect, a seamless ascent from the projects to the palace. But behind the pristine gates, beneath the polished facade of the smiling hero, a dark secret festered, hidden carefully away from the flashing cameras. The smiling pitchman was a mask. The reality it concealed was one of profound rage, jealousy, and a brutal need for control that was slowly consuming his private life. His marriage to the stunning Nicole Brown seemed like a fairy tale. He was the legendary athlete, and she was the vibrant, blonde homecoming queen. They met when she was an 18-year-old waitress, and he was still married. But their connection was instant. They became the golden couple, the toast of Los Angeles, commanding attention wherever they went. Their life in Brentwood, an exclusive and mostly white neighborhood, was a testament to his success, a physical manifestation of his transcendence over the poverty of his youth. Together, driving their Ferraris, they looked like the embodiment of success and happiness. This life in Brentwood was a strategic choice. It largely isolated him from the black community and civil rights struggles, a move for which he was sometimes criticized. But for Simpson, this isolation was essential to his brand. It cemented the status he had cultivated, summarized by the quote, "I'm not black, I'm OJ." He believed he had transcended race, that the burdens of history no longer applied to him. He viewed himself as existing in a category of one, untouched by the societal friction. that defined the lives of other Black Americans. He wanted to be judged solely by his achievements, but the fairy tale was a dangerous lie. The golden couple's life was a private hell of dysfunction and terror. O.J. was a jealous, controlling, and violent husband who stalked Nicole. The most notorious incident occurred on New Year's Day, 1989. Police arrived to find a terrified Nicole Brown, badly beaten, hiding in the bushes, screaming, "He's going to kill me." The incident resulted in a plea of no contest from Simpson, but he received a mere slap on the wrist, and the public largely forgave him, unwilling to let reality shatter the image of their hero. Then came June 12, 1994, a date burned into the American consciousness. It was a quiet Sunday night in Brentwood. The neighborhood was asleep, but one sound cut through the stillness, the agitated howling of a dog. That dog, a white Akita with bloody paws, would lead a neighbor to a dark walkway on Bundy Drive, leading to a horrific discovery that would shock the world and change the course of American culture forever. There, at the bottom of the steps leading to Nicole Brown Simpson's condominium, lay two bodies crumpled in a massive pool of blood. The scene was one of unimaginable violence. The first victim was immediately identifiable. It was Nicole, the mother of O.J.'s children. She was curled in a fetal position, silenced in the sanctuary of her own home, just yards away from where her children slept upstairs, unaware their world had been destroyed forever by the violent actions of a man they called father. The brutality inflicted upon her was shocking. She had been stabbed multiple times with such ferocity that she was nearly decapitated. It was an act of personal rage. Lying near her was 25-year-old Ronald Goldman. He was a waiter at the nearby Mezzaluna restaurant where Nicole had dined. In a tragic twist, he was there for one simple reason: to return a pair of eyeglasses Nicole's mother had left behind. He had walked into a slaughterhouse, fighting for his life, but ultimately succumbing to the violence. What happened 5 days later, on June 17th, was a slow-motion public breakdown broadcast live to 95 million people. News helicopters swarmed the skies over Los Angeles, their cameras trained on a single vehicle. In that moment, the narrative of O.J. Simpson's life was shattered. The image of the white Bronco became seared into history, turning the ultimate sports hero into the world's most famous fugitive. It was the birth of reality television. On that Friday, Simpson was scheduled to surrender to the LAPD. He never showed up. Instead, he and his friend Al Cowlings fled in a white Ford Bronco, with O.J. reportedly in the back seat clutching pictures of his children and a gun. The vehicle led police on a 60-mile, low-speed pursuit through Los Angeles. It was a fugitive flight in the most public way imaginable, a rolling spectacle of a man running from the ruins of his own life. The situation inside the Bronco was volatile. Al Cowlings, on the phone with police, screamed for them to stay back, claiming O.J. had a gun to his head and was threatening suicide. The nation watched in disbelief. This was not a movie. It was real. The event was so seismic that networks interrupted coverage of the NBA Finals. The championship game was relegated to a small box in the corner of the screen, while the main feed showed the tragic spectacle on the 405 freeway. As the Bronco cruised down the freeway, a truly surreal scene developed. People flocked to the roadside and gathered on overpasses, cheering. They held signs, and incredibly, many chanted, "Go, O.J." It was a bizarre display of celebrity worship. America was captivated, not by the horror of a double murder, but by the spectacle of a hero's public fall from grace broadcast in real time. While the chase became a media circus, LAPD detectives dealt with a different reality. Back at the Bundy crime scene in Simpson's estate, they collected a mountain of physical evidence they believed would lock the case. As far as investigators were concerned, this was an open and shut case. They believed they had their man, and the evidence to prove it was, in their minds, irrefutable. The pressure was on to solve the case of the century. The forensic story was gruesome, a trail of blood drops, which detectives believed belonged to the injured killer, led away from the bodies. With new DNA technology, this blood was tested. The results were explosive. The blood drops at the scene matched O.J. Simpson. The mathematical probability of it being anyone else was infinitesimally small, making it virtually impossible to be a coincidence. a number so staggering it defied all logic to suggest otherwise. To the prosecution, this was the smoking gun, the biological signature of the killer left at the scene. The glove evidence was the most compelling link. A bloody, left-handed glove was found at the crime scene. Later, Detective Mark Furman discovered the match a bloody right-handed glove behind the guest house on Simpson's sprawling and quiet estate. It was the evidence prosecutors dream of, a direct physical bridge connecting the crime scene to the suspect's sanctuary. Receipts would later show Nicole had purchased those exact gloves for O.J. Furthermore, bloody shoe prints stamped through the crime scene were identified as belonging to a rare, expensive Italian shoe, a Bruno Magli, size 12. This was significant because it was the exact large shoe size O.J. Simpson wore. Only 299 pairs of that specific shoe had been sold in the U.S. A bloody trail, matched gloves, and a rare shoe print. The physical evidence seemed completely overwhelming. To any objective observer, the case against the hero looked like a slam dunk. The evidence was stacked high, but Simpson was not a typical defendant. He was a wealthy celebrity who assembled the dream team. It was an unprecedented gathering of the most brilliant legal minds in the country, including Robert Shapiro, Johnny Cochran, and F. Lee Bailey. It was a high-powered lineup built for one purpose: to win at any cost. They set up their war room and began to dismantle the state's case piece by piece. The prosecution, led by Marcia Clark and Christopher Darden, felt confident. They were armed with the latest scientific evidence, DNA. They had the blood drops, the Bronco evidence, and the glove. They also had a clear motive, a history of domestic violence and rage. They believed the facts were on their side and saw themselves as the voice for the victims, who could no longer speak. But Simpson's team, led by Johnny Cochran, had a different plan. Cochran understood that this trial would not be one on facts or DNA probability. It would be one on narrative, emotion, and the deep racial wounds of Los Angeles. He intended to tell a story bigger than the murder, one that would put the system itself on trial. He knew that in the current climate, an acquittal was possible if he could frame O.J. as a victim of police corruption. The Dream Team members had specific roles. Barry Scheck was the DNA expert tasked with attacking the prosecution's science. F. Lee Bailey was the bulldog lawyer famous for sharp cross-examinations. Their collective goal was more ambitious than creating reasonable doubt. They aimed to change the entire narrative, shifting focus from the defendant to the accusers and convincing the jury that the LAPD was corrupt to its core. The defense employed a brilliant strategy. Since they couldn't wish away the physical evidence, they attacked the people who collected it. They argued that the mountain of evidence wasn't proof of guilt, but proof of a vast, racist conspiracy by the LAPD to frame a famous black man. This was their path to victory: to convince the jury the police planted the blood and glove, to bring down an icon. The trial quickly morphed into a referendum on the Los Angeles Police Department, an institution with a documented history of racism. The memory of the 1992 Rodney King riots, which had burned the city just 2 years earlier, loomed large. The jury, comprised mostly of black citizens, understood this context intimately. The defense didn't have to prove the conspiracy was real. They just had to prove the LAPD was capable of it. The defense turned one of the prosecution's key witnesses into their own star. Their target was Detective Mark Furman, who had discovered the bloody glove. Furman provided the crucial link, and the defense was convinced he was the weak point. They dug for dirt to destroy his credibility, and what they found would blow the case wide open and validate their entire conspiracy theory. Under oath, Furman testified he had not used the N-word in the past 10 years. But Cochran's team unearthed tapes of Furman using the slur repeatedly and boasting about police brutality. The prosecution's key witness was exposed as a racist and a perjurer. If he lied about the slur, the defense argued, he could have lied about the glove. The courtroom gasped as the reality of Furman's character was revealed. Then came a piece of courtroom drama so potent it defied belief. It was the single biggest mistake of the trial. A desperate gamble by the prosecution that backfired spectacularly. It was a moment of hubris, a belief that their physical evidence was so strong it couldn't be refuted. Prosecutors Darden and Clark argued bitterly over whether to have O.J. try on the gloves. Against advice, prosecutor Christopher Darden asked O.J. Simpson, to try on the infamous bloody gloves. In the courtroom, it was pure theater. The nation watched as Simpson, wearing latex liners, was handed the shrunken, blood-soaked leather gloves. The tension in the room was palpable. With the world watching, Simpson began the performance. He struggled, grimaced, and pulled. He held up his hands to the jury, showing that the gloves were clearly too tight. Whether it was the liners, the shrinkage, or acting, it didn't matter. The visual was devastating. He stood there, looking at the jury with a face of bewildered and feigned innocence. This disaster gave Johnny Cochran the greatest gift of the trial. It became the centerpiece of his closing argument, encapsulated in a rhyming, unforgettable phrase. He chanted to the jury, "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit." It was the most effective line of his career, a perfect summation of reasonable doubt that reduced a complex murder trial to a simple rhyme, turning a murder trial into a catchy slogan. The trial of the century had been a grueling 9-month marathon. After 253 days of testimony and a mountain of evidence, the case went to the jury. The nation braced for a long deliberation, but the wait was shockingly short. The jury reached a verdict in less than 4 hours. The speed sent a ripple of anticipation and dread across the country. The nation held its breath. On October 3, 1995, America stopped. An estimated 150 million people paused their lives to watch the verdict. Workplaces shut down, and the stock market dipped as traders stepped away. It was the ultimate shared national event, where the entire country stared at the same grainy, televised image of the courtroom, waiting for a resolution that would never truly come. The clerk read the words that defined the decade. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty." In the stunned silence of the courtroom, O.J. Simpson's face crumpled in relief. He mouthed thank you and returned to his seat a free man. Across the aisle, the Goldman family burst into agonizing and heart-wrenching sobs. The reaction to not guilty was seismic. It was as if a fault line split the country. The verdict exposed a deep, painful truth many preferred to ignore. There were 2 different Americas experiencing 2 different realities. The verdict became a mirror reflecting the nation's racial divide, shattering the illusion of unity Simpson once represented and exposing the deep fragility of the American social fabric, revealing a chasm of understanding that no amount of evidence could bridge. Television cameras captured this divide perfectly. In offices and living rooms, white Americans stared in stunned disbelief. There was shock and a sense of profound injustice. To them, the evidence was overwhelming, and the verdict represented a total failure of the legal system. They saw a guilty man walk free because of celebrity. But in black communities, the reaction was the polar opposite. There were cheers and tears of joy. The celebration was largely misunderstood by white America. For many, it wasn't about O.J. Simpson the man. It was about the racist legal system finally losing. It was a moment of catharsis, a rare victory where a black man fought the state and won. The trial had become a proxy for generations of racial injustice. Mark Foreman was a stand-in for every racist cop, and O.J. was the symbol of a black man powerful enough to beat the system. The verdict, for many, was not innocent in the factual sense. It was payback for Rodney King and centuries of imbalance. Simpson was free, but his legal battles were not over. The families of the victims, the Goldmans and the Browns, were determined to find justice. They immediately filed a civil lawsuit for wrongful death, dragging him back into the legal arena. They vowed to pursue him until his last day. In 1997, a new trial began with different rules. This was a civil case. The dream team was gone, and the standard of proof was lower. The prosecution didn't need beyond a reasonable doubt, only a preponderance of the evidence. Furthermore, the jury pool in Santa Monica was predominantly white and arguably more hostile. In this trial, Simpson was forced to testify. Without the shield of silence, his testimony seemed arrogant, and this time, the plaintiffs had new evidence. Photographs of Simpson wearing the exact rare Bruno Magli shoes he had previously denied owning, calling them ugly as shoes. The lie was exposed. The civil jury quickly found Simpson liable for the wrongful deaths. They awarded the families a massive $33.5 million judgment. It was a moral victory and a public declaration of guilt, but a hollow financial one. Simpson's pension was protected, and the families saw almost none of the money. Simpson was free, but he was no longer the beloved icon. The criminal trial had cost him his reputation, and the civil trial had cost him his fortune. He was a pariah, shunned by the public and corporate sponsors that once adored him. He became a ghost in his own life, unwelcome in the elite circles he used to dominate. His downfall was painful. He auctioned off possessions, including his Heisman Trophy, to pay debts. He lost his Brentwood mansion to foreclosure. Exclusive golf clubs kicked him out. His celebrity status, the core of his identity, was gone forever, leaving him isolated, broke, and bitter. He relocated to Florida to protect his pension. He spent days playing golf under the hot sun and strangely vowing to search for the real killers, a search that never materialized. Instead, his quest for relevance led to bizarre TV appearances and desperate attempts to stay in the spotlight. He became a caricature of himself. His most infamous project was a book titled If I Did It, a hypothetical account of the murders. The backlash canceled the project, but the Goldman family won the rights. They published it as If I Did It, Confessions of the Killer, with the if shrunk to invisibility. It was, in effect, his confession published by his victim's family in a cynical attempt to profit from the tragedy. Simpson's quest to reclaim his past led him to a cheap Las Vegas hotel room in 2007. It was a pathetic caper, far from his life in Brentwood. He and armed associates planned to reclaim memorabilia he insisted was stolen. It was a clumsy operation that would seal his fate. Simpson led the group to confront dealers at the Palace Station Hotel. The confrontation was heated and involved brandishing weapons. The man who had once been the most charming in America was reduced to a common thug bullying people in a budget hotel room over faded relics of a past life, threatening them with a menace that recalled his darkest days. The incident was a disaster. It was armed robbery and kidnapping. In a stunning display of stupidity, an associate recorded the confrontation. O.J. Simpson, who beat a double murder charge, was caught red-handed on tape committing a felony. The Las Vegas police stormed the hotel and arrested him days later and charged him with a litany of felonies that would finally stick. The irony was staggering. Simpson was finally going to prison, but not for the murders of Nicole and Ron. It was for a botched robbery in a seedy hotel. The crime everyone remembered would never be punished, but his new crimes would be. It felt like delayed karma. On October 3, 2008, exactly 13 years after his not guilty verdict, Simpson was found guilty of all charges in Las Vegas. The cosmos seemed to have a dark sense of humor. The judge showed little leniency, sentencing him to 33 years in prison. The juice was finally caged. The man who ran for 2,000 yards and fled in a Bronco was stopped. He served 9 years before parole in 2017. He died in 2024, leaving a fractured legacy, a fallen hero, a brutal killer, and a mystery that was never truly solved to everyone's satisfaction or complete understanding. Forever debating the truth of what really happened that night, leaving unanswered questions that linger in the air like a ghost that refuses to be exorcised from the American conscience, leaving behind a complicated, dark, and unforgettable mark on history.